The MTBC Scheduler is accessible from the top row of the Billing Pro software. Find the button for the scheduler and click on Scheduler. When you click on the Scheduler button, it's automatically going to open the scheduler for today's appointments. And of course, the default view is to load the appointments for today. The Billing Pro Scheduler has a lot of nice functionality, including a quick patient search option on the left-hand side of the screen. Here we can just enter a patient's last name and click Enter on the keyboard. Once we find the patient that we're looking for, it's just a matter of clicking, dragging, and dropping the patient onto the time slot of our choice. And here I'm going to choose 9 a.m. and letting the patient go. Once we do that, it's going to open the Save Appointment window. And from here, this is where we can select a visit reason for the patient and also enter any chief complaints or notes that we might have about this patient's visit. You'll notice the quick patient search has automatically loaded for me the last name, the first name, the date of birth, and the provider who's going to be seeing this patient. And because I dropped the appointment at 9 a.m., it's automatically selecting the time of 9 a.m. Now my appointments are set up for 20-minute appointments, but your scheduler might be set up for 15-minute appointments, and I'll show you how to modify those settings under the System Management menu. Once we've entered the information that we need, if we've chosen a visit reason or entered a chief complaint, we might also notice that the patient's missing information is available right at the bottom of the screen. As soon as we go to save an appointment, it tells me what information is missing from this patient's record. And here we're missing a social security number, a phone number, and an email address. So now I can go and save this appointment, and it automatically adds this patient onto my scheduler. And now, since I still have the patient on the phone, I can go and retrieve this patient's account by right-clicking on the patient's name and going down and clicking Retrieve Patient. Once I retrieve this patient, now I can go and update the phone number, the email address, and the social security number for this patient, and click Save. Now I've saved this information and I've updated the record for this patient. And in the meantime, I've also created an appointment. If we want to create another appointment for another patient, we can just find the patient's last name and again click, drag, and drop this patient onto the time of our choice. And here again, it's automatically picked up the account number, the last name, the first name, and the date of birth. And again, it's telling me what information is missing from this patient's record. Now I'll select another visit reason, maybe this patient's coming in for blood work, and I'll click Save. Here now we can see the patients who are scheduled for today's visit. We can see the times that they're coming in, their first name and last name, and also if we scroll a little bit to the right, we can find additional information, like the home phone and any notes we may have entered, as well as any outstanding patient balance. On the scheduler, we've talked about the quick search feature, but there's also other functionality. If I want to add a patient at 8 a.m., I can just double click on the 8 a.m. time slot to open up my Save Appointment window. Here I can use the binoculars feature to find a patient of my choice. Click on the binoculars to open the patient search. And again, here we have the patient search window, which you should be familiar with by now. We can go and find the patient of our choice and double click on this patient's name to load their name onto the schedule. Again, here the account number, the first name, the last name, and all other information has loaded into this Save Appointment. We can select a visit reason, enter any notes that we might like, and click Save. Now, you can also move this patient to another time slot at another time if you like, just by double-clicking on their account. When you double-click on their account, you can edit this time from information. So now if I'd like to move this patient to 3 p.m., I can just enter the 3 p.m. and click Save. Another way to move the patient to a different time slot is to cut the appointment from the 8:40 time slot and paste it onto another time slot. To do that, we just right-click on the schedule. Here, one of the options we have is Cut. And now we can go and select the right time slot and paste. Now that appointment has been moved from 8:40 until 1 o'clock. But let's say that Jane calls and says she can't come in today at 9 o'clock, but she'd like to come in tomorrow. Well, the same cut and paste principle applies. We can right-click on Jane's account and go and select Cut from the menu. Then we can go to tomorrow's view, or perhaps we see tomorrow doesn't have any scheduled appointments. Thursday. Okay, the next available time that we have is on Tuesday the 8th, and we can right-click and go to Paste. And now Jane has been moved from Tuesday the 1st to Tuesday the 8th at 9 a.m. As you can see, the scheduler has a lot of great functionality, and on right-click there's added functionality. One of the things we can also do is mark the appointment as arrived. When we mark a patient as arrived, the appointment line, the entire row of the appointment, is highlighted in red to let us know that the patient has arrived at the office. To unmark them as arrived, right-click and go back to arrived, and now the patient returns to the normal white color. The scheduler is a quick and easy function to use. It allows you to schedule all of your patients just with a quick drag and drop. And as you can see, it's very easy to add as many patients as you like, as quickly as you like, onto the schedule. Once we have a full appointment schedule, one of the things that we can do is right-click on an appointment and retrieve the patient. Retrieving the patient, again, is going to open up that patient window, which will allow us now to create a claim for this patient. This window allows you to go and select, of course, the diagnosis and the procedure codes of your choice and save that claim. Then when you close this window, you can go back to the scheduler window. One of the other functions of the patient scheduler is the ability to mark a patient as a priority patient. Let's say we put Jane Smith on the schedule for today. We can put a check mark in this priority box to notify the practice that she is a priority patient. Different practices use this priority functionality for different things. Some practices use the priority functionality or the priority flag to indicate that this patient is a relative of the practice. Other practices might use this flag to notify them that this patient requires a wheelchair when they come into the office. So you can use this flag for anything that you like. And just by double-clicking on an account and putting a check mark in this priority box and hitting the Save button, it'll put a priority flag or a priority marker for that patient. Now sometimes you might need to schedule a longer appointment for a patient. To do this, modify the duration option, and you can click on it and get the duration of your choice. Let's say this is a 40-minute visit. We can click Save, and now you'll notice that there's one extension for John Smith, and this extension shows you clearly the amount of time that's been blocked for this specific patient. We can do this for any patient of our choice just by modifying the appointment and adjusting the duration. One thing we can also do from the scheduler is double-click on any blank time slot and create an appointment for a new patient. To create an appointment for a new patient who is not currently on our schedule, we simply double-click on a blank time slot. Now we'll select the option for a new patient, and immediately you can see the last name field, the first name field, the date of birth, and the home phone number have become active fields. This is where we can enter the appointment information for this patient. And select a phone number and click Save. Now we've entered a new patient for that time slot. And what's interesting now is we can also search for this patient through the same patient search functionality. We can go and search by last name, and here we find the patient that we've just selected. Now we can double click on her account and update her information. Great. Now that appointment has been created. And the more we use the scheduler, of course, the more full the scheduler will become, and the more easy we'll find it to be to add patients to the schedule. But remember, you have multiple ways to add patients onto the schedule. The quick search functionality on the left, where we simply drag and drop and save, or by double-clicking into the blank time slots and clicking the binoculars to search for a patient of our choice.